Hello class, Professor Quigley here again, and I'm going to help you get through challenge activity 3.11. Now, let's take a look at what this question is trying to ask us. I promise you it's going to take you longer to figure out what it is you're supposed to do than the actual lines of code you're going to write. So let me help you. In this problem, we're being asked to build a program that accepts a 7-digit integer, right? We are tasked with outputting that integer to the screen with a hyphen in the middle, so that way it looks like a phone number. That's it. So imagine someone types in 7 digits into the computer, and all we want to do is display it back with the appropriate hyphen in there. If you read these hints, basically it'll kind of hint to what the math is and how you're supposed to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. This phone number here, if you imagine it was a 7-digit number, let me get my calculator out. If I were to take 5551212 and I were to take that number and divide it by 10,000, 10,000 goes into that number 555 times evenly, and then I have a remainder of 1212. That's your decimals. So that's how we're going to solve the first problem, because remember, when we do integer division, anytime you take one integer and divide it by another integer, it will always be a whole number. If for some reason you take two numbers and you divide them together and they're being stored in an integer, it will always discard the decimal places. So this question is very tricky. It's very simple, but it's relying on the fact that you knew that already, that integers don't hold those decimal places. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the modulo command, which what that does is when you do that command, it makes it so that way you don't get the first part of the 555. All you do is you get the remainder. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to go back over here and you go just a little bit to 3.2 where it talks about the modulo operator, and you can follow along with there and read more about it. But let's just go ahead and dive into it. So I got my helpful pseudocode document over here to the side, and even though we just talked about it, I'm still going to use this pseudocode document. It says to declare a variable. The variable is going to be called phone num, which is an abbreviation for phone number, and then we need it to be an integer, because remember, like I said, an integer divided by an integer will ignore all the decimal places and it will just give you the rounded version. So I am going to say integer phone num. That satisfies that statement. Now over here it says assign a value to phone num. So remember, you got to read it backwards. If over here it says assign to value phone number, the variable that's going to hold the new value is always going to be over here on the left. So I'm going to say phone num equals, because the equal statement is how we assign something. And what am I going to assign? I'm going to do get next input. Remember, it's not going to be a hard-coded value that we want to be the same every single time. We want this to be a value that the user had given to us. And so in our case, Zybooks is going to do that for us. When we run the program, Zybooks, by using this get next input statement, get next input, Zybooks will kindly pretend like it's a customer and just randomly stick a value into phone num. Now I'm going to go to the next line, and this is where we're going to do that math that I was talking about. So it's going to say put the value of dividing phone num by 10,000 using integer division to output. So what I like to do, I know this is telling me I'm going to put something to output, so I like to write put to output. That way I know I have all that in there working. Then what am I going to put? I'm going to put that in the middle here because it starts with the put and it ends with the to output. And it's going to be the value of dividing phone num by 10,000. So I'm going to take phone num divided by 10,000. So if you remember, that's what we did on the calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check. Now you'll notice if the expected output, I don't have the first 3 digits highlighted because that's letting me know the first 3 digits that I'm outputting is correct. The yellow is what I'm missing. So I'm missing the hyphen, and then I'm missing the 1, 2, 1, 2. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click next so I can keep going. I am going to put to output. And what am I going to put to output? I'm going to put a space. No, I'm not going to put a space. I'm going to put a hyphen. So make sure it's just the quotes, hyphen, quotes. Make sure there's no space, and otherwise it will be wrong. Drop down to a new line. And this is where I'm going to use the module command. So I'm going to put something output. So I'm going to say put to output. And what am I going to put to output? I'm going to take the value. So I'm going to do phone num modulo, which is the %, 10,000. And I'm going to hit check, and that's it. I'm done. So real simple. If you remember the calculator, if you rewind to that part, you'll see how if I did that 7-digit number and I divided it by 10,000, I got the first 3 digits, point, and then it ignored the decimals because when you're using integer division, it doesn't store the decimals. And then to get the remainder, I did the module command with a value of 10,000 there, so that way 550 times 10,000 went in there evenly. So it ignored that, and all it did was give me back the remainder. So that is how you do that problem. If you have any other questions about the modulo command, hit me up in the discussion threads, and I'll be glad to go into a deeper dive with that with you.